Welcome, everyone. My name is Ella Barrett, and I am one of the co-founders of the New Conversation Initiative, as well as part of the founding team of Deep Canvassing Methodology 12 long years ago. And I am thrilled to be one of your MCs for our Conversations to Transform America Town Hall tonight. It has always been a dream come true to be able to bring deep canvassing to the national stage and train tens of thousands of leaders to have hundreds of thousands of conversations to transform our country. And I am also joined tonight by my amazing co-MC and training master, Nigel Tan. Take it away, Nigel.
Thank you so much, Ella, and hello, everyone. My name is Nigel Tan, and I'm the Director of Training here at People's Action. And likewise, I'm thrilled to be here with y'all tonight because not only are we joined by amazing leaders and visionaries in the movement, but we are also joined by Deep Canvas leaders across the country to launch our brand new National Deep Canvas Training Institute. So before we kick it off with some music, I want to let folks know we have Spanish translation. Para español, siga este enlace. And if you're watching on Facebook or Twitter and want to join the conversation right now, follow this link. Now I'm going to hand it off to Rich Hennessy, who is an artist and activist who has been throwing down with our Deep Canvas program at People's Action since the early days. Take it away, Rich.
We have the chance to turn the pages over. We can write what we want to write. We gotta make ends meet before we get much older. We're all someone's daughter. We're all someone's son. How long can we look at each other down the barrel of a gun? You're the voice trying to understand it. Make a noise and make it clear. We're not gonna sit in silence. We're not gonna live with fear. This time, you know we all can stand together with the power to be powerful, believing we can make it better. Ooh, we're all someone's daughter. We're all someone's son. How long can we look at each other down the barrel of a gun? You're the voice, try and understand it. Make a noise and make it clear. We're not gonna sit in silence. We're not gonna live with fear.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rich Hennessy, for that incredible performance, raising the energy in the room. And now I am so honored to pass it over to my counterpart, my platonic life partner, my work husband, the co-founder of the New Conversation Initiative, who was part of the founding team of Deep Canvassing with me 12 years ago, Stephen Deline.
Thank you so much, Ella. Thanks for joining tonight, everyone. And I just want to share with you, to start with, a little bit about where this approach of deep canvassing comes from in the first place. I'm here tonight talking to you about deep canvassing because on the same night that Obama was first elected president in 2008, the people of California voted by a really large margin to take the right to marry away from same-sex couples. And I'm gay. And that night, I remember sitting on the couch at my friend's house here in Los Angeles, and my sister calling me from the East Coast and holding her phone out so that I could hear people celebrating in the street, celebrating Obama's win. And at the same time, I was watching these marriage equality results come in. And I remember just feeling like I was falling down through the floor. And we lost that election because of this one TV ad. This ad that said that if gay marriage was legal, children would be taught about gay people in schools, and that would do them some kind of harm. For months, we had all had to watch that ad on TV over and over. The average Californian saw that ad 30 to 40 times before Election Day. And the unbearable thing to me was that people had believed it. They had believed this evil lie about me and a lot of people I cared about. And I remember walking around the grocery store in the days after that vote, looking at the people around me and wondering, like, did you believe that lie? Did you believe I'm a threat to children? And as a movement, we could not shake this homophobic lie. That loss was the 28th straight loss on marriage equality at the ballot box across the country. Our lives had gone up for a vote 28 times over a decade, and we had always lost. And then in the months after that, people started asking me to volunteer for this experimental project to go and talk to the people who'd voted against us, because it was clear that so many people were susceptible to this lie. If we couldn't do something about it as a movement, we were always going to lose. And my first response to going to talk to these voters was absolutely not. But the fourth or the fifth time someone tried to recruit me, I finally agreed to give it a shot. And I just remember I was driving to that first canvass. I was so scared. I had to pull my car over and call my husband and ask him, like, remind me why I should do this. Why should I follow through? Remind me why I shouldn't just turn around and come home right now. I called my husband. He was my boyfriend then because we couldn't get married. But I followed through and I was welcomed by this amazing circle of volunteers and organizers. And I went out and started knocking on some doors. And at the fourth or fifth door I knocked on, this guy in his late 30s who had voted against marriage equality talked to me. And I rolled the dice and I told him that I was gay. And it became clear that he was carrying around some homophobia, but just monster. He was uncertain, he was conflicted, he was a little confused and scared in ways that all seemed pretty human. And I was able to talk to him about what the impact of this vote, his vote, had been on me. And I felt like he heard me. And he said he'd think about voting differently next time. So nothing dramatic happened in that conversation, but I walked away from that door feeling like I'd been able to shed a lot of my fear of who he was, and he'd been able to shed a lot of his fear of me. And that was the first thing I had experienced since that election night that made me feel like I had some power against this lie. And I was just hooked. I was there for every canvas from then on, because as a big team of organizers and volunteers in this program called the Leadership Lab at the LA LGBT Center, we were learning for the first time how to have conversations that could change hearts and minds. And at the start, our script contained a lot of facts and talking points that to us clearly proved that the opposition's homophobic lies were wrong. But those facts and talking points just bounced right off the people we were trying to talk to, or even made people angry because it felt to them like we were calling them liars or saying that they were defective for feeling the things they were feeling. So then week by week, our script went from being a list of facts to being a list of questions, open-ended questions that gave people a chance to process the things that they were feeling. And we started to train ourselves to listen and to focus on sharing stories about our lives and to give people a chance to talk about their own stories. We kept being really honest and direct about who we were and what we believed and what we wanted. But at the same time, we gave people the space to find their own way to come along with us. And it worked more and more. And the lessons we were learning formed this thing that we now call deep canvassing. And as soon as it was time to face another wave of anti-gay ballot measures across the country, and we were able to take this new approach of deep canvassing and apply it directly to the heat of these elections. A bunch of us basically moved from California to Minnesota, where they were fighting a statewide anti-gay marriage vote that no one thought our movement could win. And in the months leading up to that vote, 14,000 volunteers had 220,000 deep canvas conversations with fellow Minnesotans over the phone about marriage equality. And 20,000 of the voters we talked to said they had changed their minds. So now I just want to share a video someone shot at 1:45 in the morning on election night there in Minnesota. This video starts with the campaign manager standing on a chair, telling hundreds of exhausted organizers that they should go home because the results were too close to call.
I can't thank you enough for all your hard work and dedication. It's blown my mind. Every time that I feel like we're just about to hit a wall, you guys blow right through that wall to make this a reality. And so I want you to go to bed tonight. I want you to be very, very proud of the result we have.
So that is just a taste of what it felt like to break the spell of one lie that had governed our lives. For the first time in history that year, marriage equality won at the ballot box, in part because our movement was now able to have these kinds of deep canvas conversations. And in the 9 years since that night, we've been learning that this same approach of deep canvassing works in other movements and can be used to break the hold of other lies. A series of rigorous tests by political scientists have found that deep canvassing is able to move people in a powerful and lasting way on issues from transphobia to immigrant rights to attitudes towards undocumented folks to abortion. And the most recent tests of our work last fall showed that deep canvassing was able to persuade conflicted voters to vote for Biden instead of Trump. So I'm excited for you to hear what's coming down the pike with this tactic next and how we're going to be able to use it to change the country more. And with that, I'll hand it back to Nigel.
Yes, Steve. Thank you so much for that story. And I think, to put it concisely, we all want to be Jedis in this fight for racial social justice. And deep canvassing is our lightsaber. So if you want to learn how to wield the lightsaber, then follow the link down below right now, ppls.ac/DC, to get signed up for our first version of the Deep Canvas Institute that's happening in May. All right, and so let's dig in a bit about what exactly deep canvassing is and what we've won with our deep canvassing programs at People's Action in recent years. I'm getting ready to play a video.
Deep canvassing. It is communicating with working class people about our common humanity.
These are like 15 to 20 minute conversations. Pre-COVID, they'd be on the doors. They're grounded in radical empathy, not judging people, actually being seriously curious about what people are up against and how they're making meaning of the world. And then we share a little bit about that ourselves.
The conversation is the first unit of social action. Nobody does anything without a conversation.
There will never be anything close to a revolution or even reform if we can't talk to our neighbors.
Deep Canvas is actually a weapon of mass connection. As our volunteer said, this is laying the groundwork for people to not just hear each other, but to move each other with compassion, vulnerability, and love. We start the calls and say, hey, we want to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. How are you doing? And people are like, I'm fine. And we say, well, I'm not fine. And then the person on the other end of the phone is like, you know what? I'm not fine either. And then a conversation opens up about how anxious people are, how scared they are. And what we're finding people really want to know is who's going to care for them.
This idea of really listening to people, listening to the values, and listening to the vision and the dreams of where somebody wants to go and then tapping into that reservoir of hope and belief about the greater good, about the common good, about the idea that our liberation and our freedom are intertwined.
We go deeper and we have deep conversations of understanding the root of what it means to be a person of color, to be a person in poverty in this moment.
And the reason that deep canvassing is so effective is that, yes, it may be a little bit slower, but it's because we are taking the time to have meaningful human connection.
Will we point the finger? Will we fuel the exact divisions that help Trump? Or will we turn towards each other and help build the bigger multiracial we that will win, that will heal, that will govern?
We have a beautiful movement with beautiful people committed to an amazing and inspiring vision about what our world can be.
You had 280,000 deep canvas conversations in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, in Arizona, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in places that made this victory possible.
And we've trained a mass base of over 20,000 people who now are experts in this methodology that we use at People's Action and are really leading with compassion, with curiosity, and not just having those transactional conversations on the phones, but really inviting people into the vision of what we can build if we really focus on expanding multiracial democracy and winning our agenda long term.
We needed tens of thousands of people with the creativity, the love, and the leadership to build the most scaled, soulful election organizing program ever, and that was you.
When I was making deep canvassing calls with People's Action to voters in Pennsylvania, I spoke to somebody that said that they were most likely going to vote for Trump. And I ended up telling him about how I'm in the high-risk group for COVID and that Biden winning would mean so much to me because he was going to put public health experts in charge of public health crises, and that could be life and death for me.
I've worked in politics my whole adult life. I spent almost all that time operating without any hope for real meaningful change, just trying to protect as many people as possible. And it wasn't until I came here that I thought it was possible for us to really change the direction that the country is sliding.
Deep canvassing gave me hope. It gave me a purpose.
By the end of our conversation, she just said, "Thank you so much for spending this time with me." And I asked her, like, if we vote on marriage again, like, are we going to have your vote? And she said yes. And I was elated. I was so relieved. I was shocked.
When we are able to come together and break down the shame and guilt we have been taught to feel, we are healing together.
I think what our intimate human conversation gave her was permission. Now she knew a Democrat because she knew me, and she knew that I cared about her, and I trusted her, and so she was no longer alone.
Suddenly we were talking about conclusions from the evidence of our lives, not from all of that misinformation, all of those debates and arguments that we're asked to have every day instead.
Deep canvassing really, really works. Sometimes you just need that connection, you need that empathy in order for someone to make a realization. It could really not only change somebody's life, but it could really change the course of where we're headed in this country.
I thought about what's going to happen the next time that she meets someone LGBT. Like, is she going to treat that person with more kindness and more humanity and more curiosity and love than the way she looked at me when I first said I came out at the door?
I remember talking to a voter, a Republican voter. She shared that her daughter had died of cancer the previous year. And I told her about my sister who I lost in 2015. We both cried on that call. When I talked to her about my chosen candidate, she changed her mind about her chosen candidate.
That really wasn't possible until you did it.
You all are showing up to do the work of democracy. And if we believe in America where we can correct, if we believe in an America where we can overcome, if we believe in an America that is true to her ideals, then it's going to be this work of democracy that you all have shown up to do that's going to get us there.
The power that this program built still floors me, leaves me in awe, and I'm so excited to head into this next chapter with each and every one of you.
And so I'm serious when I tell you it's time to figure out how you're going to tell your grandkids the story of how you changed everything.
Amazing. Gives me chills to see the unprecedented work that we did together to bring deep canvassing to the national elections for the first time in history last fall. We have proven that with the right conversation tools, we can reshape our democracy. And none of this work would have been possible without the volunteers from across the country and the world throwing down with our deep canvas programs. So to share a little bit of being a volunteer leader and what that experience is like, I am overjoyed to pass it off to Isaiah Smith, who's been part of our Minneapolis phone banks. And he's going to share a little bit about what it's been like to deep canvas around transforming public safety charter amendment that's been drafted by the Minneapolis community following the murder of George Floyd and the uprisings for Black lives. Take it away, Isaiah.
Thanks so much, Ella. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much, People's Action. Now, see, when I get on the phone with folks in Minnesota, my goal is to share my own personal experience with police. I try to make a human connection. The problem is, I tell somebody else's story. I grew familiar with the threat of police at a young age. I thought it was a rite of passage to run from cops, like it was a game. When I was a kid, it was fun. As I got older, things became a little more serious, and there were times that I felt targeted for no reason whatsoever. My biggest difficulty getting on the phone right now is sharing those experiences. It's hard to admit the times in your life when, you're the most powerless, you feel the most vulnerable, and it's hard to speak and then stick around for the aftermath, whether you're in front of somebody or on the phone. So, I still understand how important it is to make that personal connection. That makes sense to me. So, but see, I also understand how afraid I was when I didn't walk away. That day I saw an officer kicking a motionless man in the head. He was lying in the street. And I was standing there and I was about to walk by, but I decided I would just stand there and, bear witness to what was happening in front of me. The officer yelled at me, told me I had no business there. I told him he was wrong. I would stand there and I would bear witness, and I stood apart. I knew better than to get in the way. He stopped at some point, called an ambulance, only after a crowd of other witnesses also stopped and stood with me. And that's the story I'm willing to tell. But to be honest, I actually haven't told anyone until today, with y'all right now. I've had amazing conversations with folks on the phone, mostly because they want to tell their own story. I can think of at least 2 conversations in particular. The first conversation that comes to mind is one I had with an immigrant living downtown with his family. He was very pro-police and wouldn't let his wife walk around because of how unsafe it had become. He believed this was especially true after the protests. When I asked about whether he felt police were overworked and could use help from other agencies, he agreed absolutely. He agreed that in order for our community to get better, we had to help the police and not rely on them alone. When I asked him to survey his level of support, by the end of our call, he moved from a relative non-supporter to someone willing to even volunteer. It was amazing. The second conversation was with a woman that had so many amazing ideas. I was taking notes. She completely agreed. Something had to be done. She was very concerned with officers that had a history of domestic abuse and believed there should be a no tolerance policy for them. We got into a long conversation about that. And let me tell you, even though she never moved her level of support, when asked, when I asked about it, over and over, I'm trying to get her to move a little bit, but still our conversation went on for an hour. It was incredible. The only thing holding her back, she told me, was the feeling that additional oversight might add a layer even more problematic than the existing system. And I'm sharing my story, she's sharing hers. So by the time I got off the phone bank was finished and our community callers had already said their goodbyes. Now, even though I didn't get the chance to debrief with the others on the phone bank, what I know for sure is the lady I spoke with was definitely going to have a similar conversation of her own with somebody else she knew. And so was I. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much, Isaiah, for your leadership on the ground and on the phones, deep canvassing to win real safety for folks across Minneapolis. The precedent y'all are setting with this transformational deep canvas program will undoubtedly shape the movement to divest from policing and invest in community across the country. Thank you so much, Isaiah. So now I'd like to pass it off to another deep canvas leader, and leader on the People's Action National Indigenous Cohort, Shauna Wayhill, to share a bit about what it's been like to deep canvas for national elections. Take it away, Shauna.
Thank you, Nigel. Hello, everyone. I'm Shauna Wayhill. I'm a deep canvas leader here with People's Action and mentor with both the Institute and our National Indigenous Cohort. I am Shumash from Santa Barbara Santa Ynez Tribal Band, but I'm currently on Arapaho land in Northern Colorado. I've been deep canvassing with People's Action for about 9 months now, and starting with the general election, I have been hooked ever since. This is really powerful work, y'all. I absolutely know that these are the conversations that we are going to have that are going to transform our country. This is how we are going to win for our communities on the local and national level. I have experienced firsthand how these conversations can challenge us to see beyond our own progressive echo chambers. And I will admit, I was doubtful in my own skills at first. There is someone in my life who's like a mother to me, and I could not connect with her because there was so much anger and so much division that existed between us because we voted differently in the election. And so I thought, if I cannot connect with her, how am I going to be able to connect with a stranger, someone I've never met or seen ever? But that is the challenge of meeting this moment and rising to deep canvassing and being able to step outside of your own progressive echo chamber. And I want to share with you one of the experiences I had when I canvassed in the national election. This conversation started out extremely aggressive, but it ended in a way that I could not have anticipated. It was with a grandmother in North Carolina. And the very beginning of our call, when she answered, she was neutral. It wasn't until I immediately got to the question, of asking her who she voted for, that we definitely had a shift in the energy between us. And I had clearly triggered a response in her, and she let me know that she would not be voting for Biden. He had dementia, her daughter was a doctor, and she should know. And that was something that she really, really drilled home. Her daughter was a doctor, and this was really, really important. And there were a bunch of other right-wing talking points that got thrown in there. And she was clearly very cycled up. And I definitely was very excited to meet her back and respond to all of her points with facts of my own. But instead, I decided to make space for her anger and for her frustration. And I didn't challenge her. I listened non-judgmentally to everything she had to say. And I flat out refused to argue with her facts. And I think once she realized I had no interest in arguing with her, she was back down to a more neutral place where we could actually build a rapport with one another. And I was able to ask her about her daughter, the doctor, and how COVID was impacting her life right now. And she shared with me that it was impacting her life greatly. And from there, we were able to just really kind of meet each other in this moment, because I was able to share with her the stuff that my family was going through and how we were battling with this moment. And COVID has not been easy for my brother and my sister, who have young ones also. And I didn't move her to voting for Biden, but I will say that we ended that conversation in a way that was extremely empathetic. And it was in a way where we both really saw each other finally at the end of the call. And I know that she is going to be much more receptive the next time she gets a call from someone like me. And I am just so excited to continue to plant that seed, because that transformation and watching that when we could make space and see for each other and connect was truly powerful. And I just want to say, if any of you want to join us, I am happy to be here and support you every step of the way. Join us by going to the link that's below in the chat, or sign up at ppls.ac/DC and join our Deep Canvassing Institute training series now. Back to you, Ella.
Woo! Donna, thank you so much for telling us a bit about your experience. I just relate so deeply about the power that when we listen instead of argue that we can really make some meaningful connections with our voters. And I am sure you planted a seed with that woman. So if you, just like what Shauna just said, if you're interested in joining our Deep Canvas Institute training series, please follow the link on the screen, ppls.ac/DC, and you can join our first training series. And you'll also get the opportunity for individualized coaching with some of our top Deep Canvas leaders in the country, like Shauna. Hopefully you will get Shauna. That would be a thrill. And now I am stoked to pass it over to George Gale, who is the Director of People's Action and a longtime colleague in the Deep Canvassing movement. We could not do this work without you, George, to introduce our special guest, Heather McGee.
Hey, thanks, Ella. So glad to be in partnership with you on this. So folks, I'm really happy to now introduce Heather McGee. Heather plays a bunch of roles in our movement and has accomplished so much, but most recently, she's the author of the New York Times best-selling book, The Sum of Us. This book, it brilliantly details what happens and how we all lose, all of us, when we buy into racism, and what we all gain when we choose multiracial solidarity. Again, what we all gain when we choose solidarity. I'm so excited to hear what Heather has to say. Turn it to Heather.
True enduring progress in this country, which is deep cross-racial solidarity. A few years ago, about 5 years ago now, I was on a live television show when a man called in, a very unlikely caller, and said, "I'm a white male and I'm prejudiced." Instead of bristling at what he went then on to say, which was to describe in great detail his prejudice and fear about Black men and drugs and gangs and crime, I opened my heart and I listened, and I met him where he was and gave him some ideas about how he could integrate his life. My exchange with Gary, the prejudiced caller from North Carolina, went viral and has been seen tens of millions of times online. The conversation didn't stop there. I got to know him. He got to know me. I now consider him, though not with me politically all the time, a dear friend. The story of my racist caller is in many ways something that has taught me a lot about this moment in America and the challenges that we face. One of the first insights that I gleaned from my relationship with Gary was that we are in a massive and outmatched and unequal fight right now for the soul of our fellow Americans. And that in many ways, what shaped Gary's sense of racial prejudice was the messages he was receiving from his constant companion. And by that, I don't mean the dog that he lived with. I mean the television that was constantly on and blaring zero-sum racial scapegoating into his living room on a 24-hour basis. We know that the zero-sum racial story, the idea that progress for people of color has to come at white folks' expense, the idea that if I get a job, you must lose yours, the idea that we can't all have nice things, is the plutocrats' most powerful tool for dividing us from one another and from maintaining the political and economic status quo. And today, the same zero-sum racial scapegoating story that blames immigrants and people of color, that blames struggling families for what is wrong and broken in our economy and our society, which asks people in struggle to point their fingers at those who are struggling right alongside them instead of those who have the power to set the rules. That story is as well-funded and as sophisticated with the most technologically advanced tools as we've ever seen it. And yet my journey across the country showed me without a shadow of a doubt that organizing, deep listening, the kinds of work that deep canvassing enables all across this country is the key to creating the kinds of bonds that create consciousness change. I'm reminded of Bridget, a white fast food worker from Kansas City who had for her lifetime believed the sort of anti-immigrant, anti-Black attitudes of her family members. And she had also believed, in fact, so much in that hierarchy of human value that is latent in the story that our society tells about our economy and race, that her own labor as someone who never went to college and worked in fast food would never be worth more than $7.25 an hour. When the organizer first came to her from the Fight for 15, she said, there's no way they're going to pay somebody like me $15 an hour. But she went to that first organizing meeting anyway. And what she saw there was a Latina woman who stood up and described her life. 3 children, just like Bridget, a 2-bedroom apartment with plumbing issues, the feeling that she was trapped and couldn't see a better life for herself, for her kids. And Bridget told me, I saw myself in her. And it was through organizing, it was through deep relationship across lines of race, as she told me, Black, white, and brown, united against racism, that she discovered that it was not a matter of us versus them, of them staying down so that we could stay up. It was a matter of us all coming up together, she told me, because as long as we're divided, we're conquered. That is what I began to describe as a solidarity dividend, these gains that we can have, higher wages, cleaner air, better funded schools, a real representative democracy. We cannot have them if we remain divided. But together, in bonds of cross-racial solidarity, we can unlock those dividends, and we already are. The fact that a multiracial coalition came together against the odds, waded through high water in November and then in January in Georgia to give a majority to a party that was rejecting the explicit racism of the right wing has already allowed us to have the solidarity dividend of tackling the COVID pandemic, of the American Rescue Plan, which includes a provision that can cut child poverty in half. We have to build on those successes. We have to combat the hardening and coarsening that the right wing is trying to do to our hearts and our bonds that connect us as human beings and as neighbors in this community. We have to show people what it means to stand up for and have the backs of your neighbors and your family, just like you would for yourself. That is the spirit of humanity that is unlocked in these moments of deep canvassing, of deep listening, of sharing your story, of being open to others, and of connecting about what you hold in common. Those fundamental human values, no matter where we come from or what we look like, we all want the same basic things in life. And it's only through coming together, only through truly understanding that there are common solutions to our common problems, and only through having the courage to work through our differences and link arms together and struggle, that we'll be able to unlock those solidarity dividends. I believe that we are in a boom time for organizing, and I am so excited about the Deep Canvas Institute and so grateful to you for being a part of it. I can't wait to see what we do next.
Thank you so much, Heather McGee, for your powerful words and leadership in the struggle. The line about when we are divided, we are conquered, it really resonates because the system relies on us being divided and not seeing how much we have in common. And Deep Canvas really is a tool for us to unlock that we got way more in common as people than we have different. So I'd like to pass it back to George to share a bit about why we started our deep canvassing program here at People's Action and what it means to him. To you, George.
Hey, thanks, Nigel. Appreciate that. And thanks, Heather. That was great. So look, folks, I don't think there's any question about it. We're in a transitional period in our country's history. I believe we're in the midst of becoming an America that has more fully reconciled with the contradictions between those famous founding words and the brutal truths of what really happened. The historian and scholar Vincent Harding said, "I am a citizen of a country that does not yet exist." I believe over the next 30 years, we will come so much closer to that America that Harding envisioned, a more loving, hopeful, equitable, and healed place. And to get there, we finally got to reckon with our nation's brutal history of racism and the way racism is alive and well in every aspect of our society today. And of course, as we make progress, there will be backlash. The right will animate racism, nativism, anti-government sentiment, and so much more to block us from building multiracial solidarity. And I see our job in this moment as three things. We got to move as many hearts and minds as possible in this transitional period. We've got to win structural changes in policy and power that truly deliver equity and address the past. And that we bring as many people along for the ride in owning and celebrating the next version of America. And I think this last part is essential. We need to make these wins sustainable, and we need a bunch of people to own them for them to stick for the long haul. And this Deep Canvas Institute, that's our next move in doing all of this. The Institute's really designed to do two things. First, we're going to tell the story of deep canvassing. Millions of people across the country in their gut know we got to be in conversation with people we don't agree with, but also don't know how to have those conversations. And when they find deep canvassing, it's like they found the missing piece. So we got to spread the word through storytelling, like we did recently on Instagram Live with Queer Eye's Jonathan Van Ness, or Alicia Garza's show, Lady Don't Take No, or creating our own documentary podcast, Like to See Each Other. We got to spread the word. Next, the Deep Canvassing Institute is designed to be a training and coaching center with the capacity to train and develop and invest in thousands and tens of thousands of volunteers to have millions of conversations in the coming years. Look, at the end of the day, this all comes down to organizing. And done right, organizing is the process of creating a path for the still waking. In her new book, Purpose of Power, Alicia Garza spells this out plain as day. She says, we can't be afraid to establish a base that is larger than the people we feel comfortable with. We have to reach beyond the choir and take seriously the task of organizing the unorganized, the people who don't already speak the same language. And she is so right. Our primary challenge is not that the choir is unorganized, but that the choir is too damn small. And this institute will grow a multiracial choir that is too beautiful, too big, and too powerful to be defeated.
Heck yeah. Amazing, George. Thank you so much for your investment in building the power of deep canvassing across the country. I can't wait to build this choir with you. And now I'm excited to open up the town hall section of our event tonight. So first, I'd like to invite Aaron Garcia from our member organization, Lucha in Arizona, to ask a question.
Hey everyone, my name is Aaron Garcia. I'm the field director for Lucha, Living United for Change in Arizona. And we launched our immigration deep canvassing campaign 3 weeks ago. It's been amazing to listen to supportive, passionate, and emotional stories from the field in full support of a pathway to citizenship. But right now we have a physical wall on the border. But this, not just a physical wall on the border, but also within our communities as well. When it comes to immigration, that wall exists in some of these voters. For people who don't have an undocumented family within their family and their circle, it's in the minds of the voters, it's in the hearts of the voters, and it's a wall that's there that prevents us from talking about certain points when it relates to immigration. They seem to be very desensitized at times about the issue, and also it just seems to be compassionate fatigue. How do we deep canvas to get rid of that wall?
Hey, love that question, Aaron. And first shout out, I've been hearing lots of buzz around what you're building in Arizona and the conversations you're all having. So great work, super excited and proud of it. And I'm so glad you raised this because as we know, the right is just going to stir up anti-immigrant sentiment and demonize and, like you said, kind of desensitize people to the real struggles and pains of our immigrant family. And so I think this is actually one of the most important things we can apply deep canvassing to. And I can just tell you what I experienced in deep canvassing in North Carolina, Michigan, and Pennsylvania to increase support for undocumented folks being included in public benefits. So first, the classic deep canvas conversation where we really tried to understand where people were on the issue. How did they feel about the idea of expanded public benefits for undocumented folks? And we listened without judgment. We didn't jump on anybody because they didn't agree. And we listened to learn, not confirm. We actually wanted to understand. But then we shared, here's our experience and here's how I came to make meaning of the issue. And in some cases, that might be an immigrant telling their story, which really blew a lot of folks away. Or might be somebody like me who's been on a meaning making journey around it. And then we went a step further and asked people to be vulnerable. And like, what's a time you were hurting and you needed some help and you needed somebody to look out for you? And I swear the most rugged, conservative, non-vulnerable dude would end up going there with you. I never had somebody not go there with you and tell that story. And then we'd share our story, we needed help. And I experienced two things that happen over and over. One, for people to realize, you know what? All this stuff I think about immigration is based on no actual lived experience. Nothing I think is based on any actual interactions with immigrants, undocumented folks, with the community. I remember canvassing with one guy. He's like, you know what? I don't know any immigrants. He's like, everything I know about immigration, I learned on the TV. And you saw it wash over him, like he's got to rethink this stuff. And the other was like, I remember being in a trailer court where somebody was like, wait a minute, there is a villain in this story. There's a reason our trailer courts run down, that my wife doesn't have health care, I'm having trouble getting a job, but it's probably not a bunch of migrant kids at the border. And I've kind of gotten my eyes off of the prize and forgot who I should really be going after to change things in this country. Essentially, we found the villain, and it's not each other, it's not other low-income and working class people. And I saw it change people over and over. So I think we need to go big on deep canvassing to help way more people in this country understand the immigrant experience. And I think it could be powerful on so many fronts.
Amazing. Thank you for your question, Aaron and George, reminding us that we can ask these questions and help people really understand and see that their experience that they are seeing on the news is not the lived experience of immigrants in our country. And now I'd love to kick it to Yvonne Sue, a deep canvas leader from our National Advanced Call team, to ask a question.
So personal stories are a big part of deep canvassing, and sometimes myself and other deep canvassers have trouble coming up with stories when we don't have lived experience. For example, in our deep canvassing in Minneapolis right now for regarding changes in policing, not all volunteers have experience with police brutality. So how do we communicate with voters that we all have a stake in divesting from policing and investing in our communities?
Yes, Yvonne, it's an excellent question, and I'm grateful for it. I think at the root of the answer, it's about expanding our ideas of what being impacted really means. And I'll tell you a story to illustrate that. In my younger days, I had quite a lead foot. I just couldn't stay under 85 miles per hour on a highway. And I got pulled over a lot of times. And each one of those interactions with police, I walked out with my life intact, and I'm grateful for that. And so some could say that because I've had interactions with police and I'm still here, I haven't been directly impacted. But I can still remember the night that in my college room dorm, I pulled up the video of Oscar Grant being murdered by police in a BART station in Oakland. And I pulled up that video because in hearing the headline, I just couldn't believe that the police would kill someone in public and be recorded. So when I watched the video and I saw the shot and I saw Oscar Grant's body stop moving, that impacted me. And in that sense, I've been very much impacted by police brutality. And I think in that sense, we all have experiences like this. Whenever a murder or an execution is videotaped and is broadcasted massively to the masses, I think that's an impact on all of us. And so when I think about it like that, there's no one who hasn't been impacted on what we are talking about. And we want to prioritize reflection and self-awareness and unpacking our own experiences to really get to those experiences. Because sometimes our bodies and minds do this thing of hiding the things that have been impactful to us because we haven't processed them. So when we shine a light on it and really ask the question, Yvonne, I think we will all see that we have been impacted. We all have something at stake in what's going on. And ultimately, we want to find these stories as a way to connect to people. It's not about who has the most violent interaction with the police or experience with police brutality. It's about what impact has that had on my life? And then what story can I tell in order to connect to another person? The last thing I'd say, Yvonne, if that thread is not like getting there for some people, a big part of the fight to defund police, it's about the police, and it's also about all the things, all the resources we could afford for our people if so much money wasn't going to police departments and sheriff's departments. Education or more mental health resources or more jobs and a more stable economy is going to cost some money. And unfortunately, police across the board have way too much money related to the impact that they're actually having. So even if you're not directly or indirectly impacted by police brutality, and I would have a hard time believing that if you're living in America, even if that's the case, there are things that you want, and we need to defund police in order to make those things happen. So I really appreciate the question. That dialogue is really, really important. And I appreciate all of the questions that came out in this town hall and the questions that y'all are putting into the live stream chat as well. Those questions are why we have the Deep Canvas Institute, is to help answer those questions and land the skills that help us to answer them. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about what the Institute is and why the Institute is important. First, the Institute is a place where anyone and everyone, anywhere in the country, can learn the art and the science to deep canvassing. And they can do that while also plugging into meaningful campaigns that help change the world. Why is this the place for people to learn deep canvassing? It's because we got a super unique partnership. This unique partnership between the originators of deep canvassing, the New Conversation Initiative, and People's Action, which gives you the opportunity to work on campaigns from climate change to immigration reform and defunding police. So this means you will get the training and then put the training into practice in the same place. And in doing that, it further cements the training more. Passing it to Ella.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Nigel. I want to talk a little bit about the structure of the Deep Canvas Institute. So we are going to be running a 101 series monthly for the foreseeable future, and that includes 3 different steps. The Deep Canvas 101 includes 3 steps. The first step is actually experiencing a Deep Canvas phone bank. So you're going to come on to a Zoom, and we are going to train you in the script. You're going to get a chance to try to have these conversations and also debrief, just like Isaiah said, with a big group of people to talk about your experience and talk about how that went. And then the following week is going to be step 2, where you're going to be joining a back-to-back skills training series, where you're going to receive further deep dive training into the skills that we've been talking about tonight. Like Yvonne talking about sharing our own personal story, or talking about compassionate curiosity and how we actually pull out the voters' lived experience. And then finally, step 3, if you stick with us, we are building a program, kind of the first of its kind, where you are going to receive one-on-one coaching with a Deep Canvas expert of your very own. And hopefully that'll be Shauna. We'll see. But I would love to just take a big, deep breath, because there is a lot of emotional labor and anxiety that goes into having these conversations. And I just want you to know, if you are feeling any of that, that is 100% okay. I still get nervous after 12 years of having these conversations on my first shifts or first couple conversations of a night. And we have developed support structures and programs and people to be with you every step of the way to walk you through the process. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Matthew Rodriguez, my amazing colleague, who's the Deep Canvas phone manager with People's Action, to tell you exactly how to get signed up for the Institute.
So much, Ella. Yeah, my name is Matthew Rodriguez, and just really come to existence. And my sister was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma, a very rare form of bone cancer, just 2 months after she gave birth to my niece. And the community that they were living in was very under-resourced in the Panhandle in Texas. And basically, we had to get up and take everything we owned and move across the state to Houston, and be at MD Anderson. And in this hospital, we basically lived in and out of for a year while she went through chemo and went through this treatment. And just looking around and seeing the burden and the pain that so many people were feeling, not only because of their diagnosis, the amount of money they had to pay out, the amount of debt they were going into to take on this treatment. And it was just like, it didn't matter at that time. It didn't matter like where you were from. It didn't matter your skin color. It didn't matter anything. It was like all of us were hurting in that moment and looking around and seeing like, the only way that we're going to fix this, the only way that we're going to come past this is by like solidarity and coming together and like turning and saying, this is, we can no longer exist in this system. We have to do something to change it. And like, that is what deep canvassing channels and says, like, me and you are experiencing the same things, me and you are going through and experiencing the same burdens, and we have to stop that. And we saw that in the general work, like we talked about in Georgia, and even in COVID relief, which we did a couple months ago. It was like people calling from all over the country, calling into West Virginia, calling into Arizona, and saying like, we may not be in the same state, but we're all experiencing this hurt, we're all experiencing this harm, and we can no longer exist in this ways. We must do something about it. And creating that space for vulnerability and openness and honesty, and it works. And now we've touched on it a couple times, but I really think there could be nothing more fitting than the first program that we plug into with this institute to be the work in Minneapolis, where we've seen several police murders. We've seen, this is where the uprising and the protests started this summer. And it's like, these conversations are necessary. And this is what we're going to be doing, asking people, like, what does make you safe? How do you feel safe? Where does this come from? Like George said, we think these things and we have so many of these things internalized, but really when you ask and you create that space to say, like, you know, does 40 extra police officers in your street keep your kid safe? Does that make you have resource schools? Does that allow these parks? Does that allow like food, a roof over your head? And like when we talk through these things and make these spaces, it really allows people to move and come together on these issues. So that's going to be the first one that we're going to be plugging into in Minneapolis. And you can sign up below me or above me, wherever this is in the chat, for these phone banks. And it's going to be on this link. There's going to be 3 parts. The first part is going to be going to this link, signing up for the phone bank, where we're going to see the script, be able to walk through it, get familiar with deep canvassing and what it is. And then the next 2 parts are going to be our skills series. So we're going to have a skills series on May 10th and May 11th, where we're just going to walk through these things, see the 101, and get real comfortable to start to enable everybody to have these and be a part of this process with us. And throughout this experience, throughout everything that we're building here, we just want to stress, like, there is unlimited openness and unlimited support. So just like Ella said, if you're feeling nervous, if you've never done this before, if this is something completely new, that is okay. We want you to be a part of this. We want to build this, and we want to win. We want to change the systems around us because we know they're not working, and this is a way that we can do it. So just so proud to be here with all of you and to continue to fight with all of you on so many of these issues that are bringing us together, and do this thing. So thank you. I'll pass it back to you, Nigel.
Thanks so much, Matthew. And that's totally. We all got something to contribute to that fight. And so I'm grateful to all of us here. So we're going to go out the same way we came in. We're going to hear some music from Rich Hennessy, who's going to close us out, passing it away. Thank y'all.
When is enough enough? You've been filling me, filling me, filling me up, but I'm not feeling it, feeling it, feeling it now. What are y'all giving me isn't your love, isn't your love. This isn't love. You've got lies coming out of your mouth, and I've tried to get rid of the doubt, and I've been spending all my time waiting on you to be everything you said that you wanted to be. Spending all my nights dancing around you, spinning out my mind trying to make you believe we've got something worth fighting for, fighting for. But I'm not sure it's worth dying for, dying for. When is enough, enough, enough? When is enough, enough, enough? You're killing me with every promise you don't keep. You're killing every dream of us. When am I gonna be enough? What is enough? Enough, enough. When is enough? Enough. You've got lies coming out of your mouth, and I've tried to get rid of the doubt, and I've been spending all my time waiting on you to be everything you said that you wanted to be. Spending all my nights dancing around you, spinning out my mind trying to make you believe we've got something worth fighting for, fighting for. But I'm not sure it's worth dying for, dying for. Where's enough? Enough, enough. When is enough? Enough, enough. What is enough? Enough, enough. What is enough? Enough. You've been filling me, filling me, filling me up, but I'm not feeling it, feeling it, feeling it now. What are y'all giving me isn't your love, isn't your love. What is enough? Enough, enough. When is enough? Enough. When is enough? Enough, enough. When is enough? Enough, enough.